So there's an argument in energy debates that we're still waiting on some breakthrough, some miracle technology before we can seriously move away from fossil fuels. That assumption drives delay, it drives policy hesitation, and it gives cover to people who'd rather not change anything at all. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if the technologies we need to fully transition to clean energy already exist, and the real barriers aren't technical at all? Well, that's a core argument behind a new book called Still No Miracles Needed. And today we're going to unpack what that actually means, what the data shows, and what decision makers should be focusing on right now instead of waiting on the next shiny solution. Hey, but before we jump in, if you find these conversations useful, like the episode, subscribe to the channel, and click the alert bell so you don't miss future discussions on how the clean energy transition is actually playing out. My guest today is Mark Jacobson, a professor at Stanford University and one of the leading researchers on energy systems and pathways to 100% clean energy. He is also the author of the aforementioned book, Still No Miracles Needed. Mark, welcome to the Clean Energy Edge.
Thanks for having me on, Russ.
Well, this is exciting, and I want to jump right in with your new book and kind of take it from there. Let's start with the title. What do you mean by still no miracles needed, and why was it important to make that case now?
Well, Still No Miracles Needed is a follow-on from a previous book called No Miracles Needed that was published 3 years ago. And the original title was based on, really, it came from several people, but most prominently Bill Gates had claimed that we need a miracle technology to solve the climate problem. And I've been working on understanding air pollution and climate problems since 1989. So we're talking 37 years now, and also developing clean renewable energy solutions to those problems for the last 25 years or so. And I evaluate different solutions, and what I find is that we have 97% of the technologies that we need. And the real solution is pretty simple. And first of all, I'm looking to solve not only the climate problem, but also the air pollution and energy and security problems. And these are really, the air pollution in particular, those problems come from the same sources as climate problems, namely fossil fuel and bioenergy fuel emissions for energy. I mean, energy causes about 90% of air pollution and 75 to 80% of climate problems. We also have to address non-energy solutions as well, which is discussed in the book. But, with the claim that we need miracle technologies to solve these problems is just not correct, because the solution is to electrify almost everything and provide the electricity from clean renewable sources. And we have most of these electric technologies. We have electric vehicles, we have electric heat pumps, we have electric induction cooktops, we have electric furnaces. And the key then is to electrify transportation with electric vehicles, mostly battery electric, some hydrogen fuel cell electric, for long distance heavy transport, electrify buildings with electric heat pumps for air and water heating, air conditioning, even clothes drying. You can use heat pumps, and electric induction cooktops for cooking, and then energy efficiency, of course, using LED lights, also, and energy efficient appliances to reduce energy use, basically get rid of gas combustion or wood combustion in homes. And then electrifying industry with arc furnaces, induction furnaces, resistance furnaces, and even electric heat pumps for some processes. And those are the main sectors: transportation, buildings, and industry beyond electricity. And then provide the electricity for these sectors and for the regular electric power sector with just onshore and offshore wind, solar photovoltaics on rooftops and in power plants, concentrated solar power, geothermal electricity, hydroelectricity, maybe small amounts of tidal wave electricity. So all these technologies exist. What we don't have we don't have long distance aircraft and ships running on electricity. We do have some short distance aircrafts and ships running on electricity, but we need the long distance ones. So that's, the 3% plus, a few other technologies are needed. But all we need to do right now is deploy on a large scale what we have, the existing technologies. And certainly as we do that, we'll improve existing technologies to make them better. But we don't need new things and some things don't even work, as I'll I can probably expand upon later, but what we don't need are small and large nuclear reactors. We don't need carbon capture, direct air capture, blue hydrogen, electrofuels, all pushed by the fossil fuel industry. We don't need bioenergy, biofuels, biomass for electricity or transportation. And and so a lot of those technologies are couched under kind of miracle technologies that we need, and there are some others. But we don't need those because we have what we need, and we really just need to deploy on a large scale. And we do see examples of this going on in China, for example. China last year built over 400 gigawatts of wind, water, and solar, or really wind, water, solar is what we call all those technologies, those electric generating technologies that I just discussed. And they exported another 400 gigawatts. And by the way, 400 gigawatts is the about the same peak capacity as all the nuclear plants in the world built in history. And so in 1 year, they built this equivalent of, in terms of peak power, all the nuclear plants in history that have been built. And so for people to claim, well, we can't do it with existing technologies, that's just misunderstanding what is possible. And to give you one more example of this, I mean, at China's current pace of installing wind, water, and solar electricity, and also not only this year's pace, but or 2025's pace, but 2024 is considering that as well. China, if they continue installing at that pace and they electrify all energy sectors, will be 100% wind, water, solar across all energy sectors with zero emissions from energy at all by 2051. So that's within 25 years if they continue at their current pace. The United States, on the other hand, at their current pace, and this is even before the Trump administration changes, will only get there by 2148, so almost 100 years later. Just to give you an idea of how slow the United States is going, India is also going as pretty slow as well, similar to the United States. But there are actually 8 countries going faster than China, surprisingly, but not because, I mean, it's only surprising in the sense that, well, can a country actually transition that fast? So countries can, but they're also, of course, all the other countries are slower, and most of them are much slower than China, and many are slower than the United States. So we have a long way to go, but we can do it with existing technologies if we actually put our mind to it.
Well, our president just said that China, they don't have any wind. They just export this stuff and it's junk. You're saying the opposite here.
Oh, no, China is the leading not only wind turbine builder in their own country. They have more wind than any other country. In fact, they have more wind than all other countries combined installed. And so, I mean, I'm not sure if he's just being facetious or he just doesn't want to learn about what's really going on in the world. But the fact is that China is both building and exporting their own wind and using it to generate power. And just to give you an idea of how far along China really is, if I haven't already, China already today can produce about 54% of what the United States needs in 2050 to go to 100% renewables across all energy sectors. So what the US needs in 2050 to go 100% renewable across all energy sectors, thereby eliminating all emissions associated with energy, air pollution, and climate emissions associated with all energy, China's already producing 54% of that energy from just wind, water, and solar alone, nothing else. And so for the US to say, oh, we can't do it, it's not possible. I mean, China's already more than halfway there compared with what the US needs, and 61% of the way there compared with what India needs to go to 100% renewables across all energy sectors. So it's really just a question of willpower, and it's social and a political problem, the solution. It has nothing to do with technical or economic barriers. And because, we can do it if we actually decide to. But what we're deciding to do right now in the United States is not solve the problem. We're trying to make the problem worse, to make people spend more money on energy, to saddle people with high costs for decades, saddle people with air pollution deaths, like there are 100,000 air pollution deaths in the US from oil, gas, and coal, and also bioenergy fuels. And, and this is not necessary. This is totally unnecessary because a wind, water, solar solution, as I just talked about, eliminates death from energy-related deaths from air pollution. It eliminates climate damage. of climate emissions associated with energy, and provides energy security, uses less land even, costs a lot less. It's cost the annual energy cost of a wind, water, solar system is 60% lower than with a fossil fuel system. And it's easy to understand why. And there are 5 reasons why. But and the main reasons are that, well, when you use 54% less energy with wind, water, solar after electrifying everything, because electric heat pumps use 75% less energy than gas or oil or coal combustion heating. Electric vehicles use 75% less energy than do internal combustion engine vehicles. Electrifying industry uses a few percent less energy than does combustion for industry. And then 11 to 12% of all energy worldwide is used to mine, transport, and refine fossil fuels and uranium. And when we go to wind, water, solar, wind comes right to the turbine, solar comes right to the panel. We do not need to mine for fuels. We eliminate 11% of all energy worldwide that's wasted on that. And another 5 to 6% of that reduction of 54% reduction is due to end use energy improvements beyond the business as usual case. When we add all those energy improvements up over all energy sectors, that's about a 54% reduction of energy demand just due to electrifying and providing the electricity with wind, water, solar. And then the cost per unit of energy of wind, water, and solar is on the order of about 15% less than with fossil fuels. So that gives us a 60% lower annual energy cost when we go to clean renewable energy. To give you absolute numbers, the world spends today $11 trillion per year on energy from across all energy sectors. That's expected to go up to $17 trillion per year in 2050 in a business as usual case. In addition, there's another $30 trillion per year in health costs associated with fossil fuels and bioenergy fuels. That's due to the almost 7.5 million air pollution deaths per year worldwide due to these fuels. And then there's another $30 trillion per year in climate costs estimated by 2050. And so that's 30 plus 30 is 60 plus 17. That's $77 trillion per year in what's called social costs due to in a business as usual case, due to fossil fuels and bioenergy fuels. If we electrify everything and provide the electricity from clean renewable sources, we eliminate the $30 trillion in energy-related health costs, the $30 trillion in energy-related climate costs, and we reduce the energy costs themselves by 60% from $17 trillion per year to $7 trillion per year. So you're paying a lot less per year in terms of energy costs and social costs, and it's paying back quickly, and you're eliminating the health and climate costs associated with the problem. You're reducing land use. So lower land use, lower costs, more energy stability and to eliminating insecurity, and as I said, reducing and eliminating air pollution and climate costs associated with energy. So it's a win-win situation all around.
Well, you're singing my song here, Mark, because what I've found is the biggest barrier for, let's say, skeptics of clean energy and that transition is they don't understand it. It's the education piece. And all the data, everything you just laid out there, they find it too complicated. So is there a real easy way to break that down that you found when explaining this to skeptics?
Yeah, well, there's different areas where it's you have to break it down. I mean, if most people are concerned with their own pocketbooks, so let's take the price of electricity. If we actually look at, some people say, well, renewables are causing electricity prices to be higher, and electricity prices in the U.S. are growing on average. But actually, if you look at the states in the United States with the most wind, water, solar as a fraction of their demand, and they're actually South Dakota in the last year supplied 120% of its demand with wind, water, solar. And most of that was wind and then water and then a little bit of solar. There's almost, there's about, close to 80% wind on the South Dakota grid as a percent of demand. And then there's about 35 plus percent of of hydro, and then the rest was solar. And but South Dakota had an electricity price less than 2 cents a kilowatt hour below the U.S. average, even though it's supplied more than 100% of its demand with just wind, water, solar. In fact, if you look at the top 6 states with the most percent of demand supplied by wind, water, solar, and these all had between 60 and 120% of their demand supplied by that. They all had electricity prices 2 to 5 cents a kilowatt hour below the U.S. average. In fact, 11 out of the 12 top states with the most electricity supplied from wind, water, solar as a percent of demand had electricity prices 2 to 5 cents a kilowatt hour below the U.S. average. So it's just a myth to claim that renewables cause high prices. And people always, this is kind of where the deception comes. They always point to California. Oh, California has high electricity prices and also a lot of renewables. Therefore, those renewables are causing high prices. Well, in fact, first of all, California is ranked number 13 on this list. It's only about 50% of its demand in the annual average is met by wind, water, and solar. And it does have high prices. But of course, those high prices have nothing to do with renewables. And not only you can see that by looking at all these other states that have even more renewables and much lower prices, have to do with the fact that California has had a lot of wildfires caused by transmission line sparks, where those costs of those wildfires are transferred to customers. In addition, there were 2 gas disasters, the San Bruno and Aliso Canyon gas disaster. San Bruno blew up an entire city block and killed many people and destroyed a lot of homes due to gas. The liability costs of that was passed on to customers in California. The Aliso Canyon gas disaster, where several months of an unabated gas blowout from a storage facility caused mass evacuations and lots of damage, and those costs were passed on to customers. In addition, because of San Bruno, California had to all the utilities had to strengthen all the underground gas pipelines. So that cost was passed on to customers. Because of the fires, there's a lot of undergrounding of transmission lines. That cost is being passed on to customers. In addition, California has the second or third highest gas prices in the U.S., and there's gas is used on the grid still for part of the electricity. That cost obviously goes to customers. We're also subsidizing keeping this old, expensive nuclear power plant, Diablo Canyon, open. That cost is being passed on to customers. And then we have an old transmission distribution system that requires upgrading. That cost has been passed on to customers. So if it hadn't been for the growth of solar and wind, which are only 5 to 6 cents a kilowatt hour versus the price of electricity, 32 cents a kilowatt hour, the solar and wind have been keeping the price lower than they would have otherwise been. So there's a lot of myths going around about electricity costs.
That's really the punchline is people equate in California solar and wind because there's so much there. They're saying it's higher electricity prices. In fact, it's the opposite is what you're saying. If it wasn't for solar and wind, wow, it would be really expensive because of the infrastructure of traditional fossil fuel power gen.
Yeah. And in fact, the batteries we've eliminated just in the last 2 years, about 38% of the gas use on the grid due to the growth of solar and batteries. And in fact, last year we had the biggest growth of batteries in particular, but also had a huge growth of solar. And electricity prices actually did go down 11% in 1 year. From January of 2025 to January of 2026, PG&E, or main utility on the main CAISO grid, announced that 11% reduction of electricity price. We still have second highest prices in the U.S. I'm not saying it went down a lot, but still it was 11% drop. So even that argument that, more renewables and batteries are increasing the prices, it's just not even true on its face, because electricity prices actually did go down 11% in the past year when we had a huge growth of batteries. And it's pretty obvious that batteries, for example, they do not cost a lot for the grid. So for example, we now have on California's main grid, we have 15 gigawatts of batteries. And just to put that in perspective, and they're 4-hour batteries. So you can multiply 15 gigawatts times 4 hours, that's 60 gigawatt hours of storage. But to put that in perspective, the average demand on California's main grid is a little less than 24 gigawatts. So you can meet about 68% of the average demand for 4 hours And the peak demand last year was around 48 gigawatts. So we're now able to meet almost a third of the peak demand for 4 hours just with batteries. And that's just in the last 2 to 3 years, these batteries were added. But if you then take the cost of those batteries and the absolute cost of those batteries and divide by the electricity production on the grid, that's only about 0.27 cents per kilowatt hour of electricity. So that's compared with the cost of electricity of 32 cents a kilowatt hour. So we're talking like less than 1% of the cost of electricity is from the batteries. And that's replacing, these batteries are replacing gas on the grid, which is way more expensive. It's anywhere from, it could be as low as like 7 cents, but it could be up to 20 cents a kilowatt hour of electricity for the gas. So these batteries, and then the solar is only 5 cents a kilowatt hour. Solar and batteries are replacing gas and keeping the price low. It's pretty obvious from the fact that solar is the cheapest form of electricity right now in the world, and batteries are inexpensive. Their costs are coming down so rapidly that they really don't add much to a total grid electricity cost.
Yeah, this seems to be the time of batteries. I'm going to say here the last few years with the advancements in the tech, the chemistry, the economics are so much better now compared to even 5 years ago, even 2 years ago. I'd say we're really moving into that space. What do you say to those that have the argument? Because I know what I say whenever they tell me, well, clean energy only works because of the subsidies, because us taxpayers are paying for it, when that's not really the case. I mean, it's going away for everything except for BESS with the billionaire bill, but I think a lot of people don't recognize. I'm going to say 90-some% of the people don't understand that fossil fuels have been receiving subsidies, continue to, for 100 years.
Well, yeah, it's really this truth is that dirty energy requires subsidies to stay open. I mean, they're the ones getting the subsidies now. I mean, it's no longer the case. First of all energy historically has received subsidies, but fossil fuels have been around the longest, and they've received cumulatively the most subsidies. Nuclear is probably the heaviliest subsidized energy source in terms of from per unit energy. And, renewables certainly have received their share of subsidies, but it's just to keep the playing field level. But, in the fossil fuel industry, they have subsidies built into the tax code. They get direct subsidies. There are also the subsidies from the health and climate costs that they're not paying for, that they're just passing on to the rest of us. And we're paying for in the form of higher insurance premiums, higher workers' compensation rates, lost work days, lost school days, more hospitalizations, more emergency room visits, just higher healthcare costs in general, and higher taxes. We're all paying for the subsidies, these indirect subsidies of the fossil fuel industry. So so the people who just try to point to subsidies to wind and solar, and then at the same time ignore the way larger subsidies of fossil fuels, it's kind of really deceptive, to be honest. But wind and solar are the cheapest. If everything's unsubsidized, wind and solar are by far the cheapest forms of new electricity in the world, everywhere.
Well, and that circles back to your book title, Still No Miracles Needed. So again, the technology's here, and the technology that's here continues to improve. So I think that's well said. Before we wrap up, where can listeners find Still No Miracles Needed? And you've got several other books. Where's the best place for folks to find those?
Well, yeah, unfortunately, it's the best place is probably Amazon. Barnes & Noble has it. Cambridge University Press has the book available. Those are the main outlets, I think, that people get the book, and it's widely available. It's called, again, Still No Miracles Needed, and by the publisher is Cambridge University Press. But yeah, I think it was a book that I was very passionate about writing. It really embodies kind of my life's work in trying to understand and solve these large-scale air pollution and climate problems. So if people are interested, I'm happy about that. But I really think we need to try to solve these problems together. It's going to take a collective effort, and so hopefully this book will help to educate the public and policymakers about what's possible, what can be done, what should be done, and what's the time frame for doing it.
Education piece is, I'd say, the most important thing because, like you said, the technology's here. It's just applying it. Um, and where's the best place for people to follow your work or to connect with you?
Well, I have a website at Stanford. It's got too long to say verbally, but I'm also on Blue Sky and X and LinkedIn and different platforms. So, I'm not. I don't think I'm too hard to find. But just
You're not hard to find.
so
We'll have everything in the summary here of the podcast. So really appreciate it.
yeah,
Mark
yeah.
Jacobson,
Well, thank you,
thanks
Russ.
for grounding this conversation in evidence and reality. And well, we really appreciate your time.
Yeah, appreciate it too. Thanks for having me on.
And thanks to everyone listening. If this episode helped to clarify what's actually possible today, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who still thinks we're waiting on a miracle, because we're not. We'll catch you next time.